All right. This is our second episode of our Exile period. We don't have our backgrounds. We don't have any banners. We can't refer to Ethan Ralph, the kill stream, as a convicted sex offender.
I mean, I think you
I
just
mean,
did.
I could create a banner to do it again. But like we had a whole bunch of banners, a whole bunch of inside jokes. Those are all gone. They're taking away our videos, taking away some of our sound clips.
Well, let's be clear. They haven't taken them away. Taking them away implies they don't exist. They totally exist. This is worse. They're being held hostage for money. It's
Yeah.
extortionate.
And well, if all of our viewers had to pay money to help support the show, that would be let's be generous. That'd be $7 per viewer per month.
Let's be no. Let's not be generous. Let's be honest. That'd be $7 total.
Well, no, no. I mean, we can sometimes pull in 10, even tens of viewers.
Yeah. No, I in my recent Substack, as I mentioned, I upfront mentioned that I'm on a podcast. We talk about this sort of thing, and I'm very honest. I'm like, it's not a great podcast. It's not a famous or
Hey,
successful podcast, but it's ours.
well, hold up. I would say we're pretty good. We're not successful, and there are very few
Yeah,
we're not successful, and maybe now that we have been exiled to this old Windows screen, we might do something to help us be more successful. Like make some clips, post some clips.
I mean, look. Who knows? There's always the potential that you spend 10 or 15 years trolling around and nobody cares. Then one day the sun parts, or the clouds part, the sun shines, and everybody's like, "Oh yeah, I've heard about this thing. Have you guys heard about this thing?" It could
Or
always happen.
the head of the Brazilian soccer uh, association could swing naked in a drunken club and be seen by
Could
7 million people.
could happen. Could totally happen.
And that's how I'm segueing into my review for the movie Balls Up. Now, this is without a doubt the most product placement movie I have ever seen.
Wait. Does it actually beat Eight Crazy Nights with Adam Sandler?
Yes.
Wow,
So here's
that
the
is a
premise.
fucking accomplishment.
So here's the premise of the movie. Right. Mark Wahlberg and some other guy work for a condom company, and they want to make the official condoms for the Brazilian team for World Cup, and get all the condom advertisement rights. And the engineer, I guess, uh, designs a condom that is so roomy it gets the balls and the shaft. This is why I told Aaron's wife this is a movie perfect for Aaron. He wants to call it the Sentinel, the testicular Sentinel.
Right.
They decided to call it Balls Up. The sales team has a better idea, and they go present Brazil. Sales guy presents Portuguese. Then the head of the Brazilian Football Association gets drunk, gets fired from his job, and they go with an ultra thin condom as the official condom for the Brazilian soccer team. And you know, I have questions about the decision because I don't think a bunch of Brazilian guys should have ultra thin condoms. But also, I think that's weirdly racist, just a little bit. These black and brown guys don't want to have good, strong, condom type protection. So the
Yeah, but
key
we don't have the banner for racism time.
I mean, we don't.
So
But
clearly it's not racist because it's not the time.
hmm, hmm. but so they get fired from their jobs. But the Brazilian government doesn't realize they got fired. They get their free VIP package to go to World Cup in Brazil, even though it's the wrong year in the wrong country, whatever. And they're there for the final match, Brazil versus Argentina. Now, at no point so far in the story has anything sounded like an actual movie is about to happen. So, Joe, how do you think this setup turns into a movie?
Well, oddly enough, while I did not see Balls Up, I have recently watched two Mark Wahlberg comedies.
Mhm.
And I suspect that it less relies on plot and more on very well timed kind of situation or sight gags that
Well,
carry. Because believe it or not, Mark Wahlberg is a funny man. He's actually good at being funny. So I'm expecting kind of a stoner humor level
well,
of commitment.
well, you're kind of close. The fat engineer gets drunk. He thinks the sausage mascot is a penis and is making fun of him. And so, as a drunken American sports fan, he gets onto the field and he beats up the penis sausage. Mark Wahlberg tries to stop him, and this leads to the game-winning goal being deflected in Brazil, losing the World Cup. And the rest of the movie is about how these gentlemen escape Brazil without being murdered.
Even though like soccer has fantastically viciously officious rules and that interference would not be counted, they just get an extra kick.
Yes, but the fact that where the kick took place and blah blah blah. Eh. The setup was two Americans go in jail for screwing up a
Right.
rivalry world championship soccer game.
Right. They would still end up in jail. There's still a story there. I'm just saying that as a as someone who watched the footy with my mom, they would call it no good and then they'd ask for another kick and you'd still have a winner and a loser. And
Yes,
it's entirely
and
plausible that if the other team won, that Brazil would still be extremely pissed off at those Americans.
well, no, Brazil lost, so Brazil was very pissed off,
That's what I'm saying.
and they go on a escape because the head of their criminal justice system slash military lets them go, but he doesn't tell the Brazilian people to not murder them. And it's your standard road movie escape thing. They do find a drug dealer who takes them in for a little bit because he bet money that Argentina would win because he wanted to cover the spread, and he made $60 million on that bet.
Oh yeah, he's very happy.
But then shenanigans happen at the drug dealers, and they run. They find a bunch of radical hippie environmentalists, and things go well until they eat some endangered species, and then they run, and then they fall down a waterfall, and they end up in the Uruguay. But Mark Wahlberg says, no, not Uruguay, excuse me, Argentina. Mark Wahlberg makes the joke, "Is this Uruguay?" And the Argentinian soldier folds up the flag and says, "They do look very similar." And the public defender, who they rejected, was actually Argentinian intelligence that wanted to smuggle them out of the country. And that's the gist of what happened in Balls Up.
Here's the thing. Overall, it doesn't sound like a great movie. Okay.
But it was direct to streaming.
Yeah, it's what it sounds like is a fun movie that you don't regret watching.
And it had that whole stoner sex comedy sort of aesthetic to it.
The reason I had a sense of what to expect in this film was because recently, Ty, who might as well be another person on the gospel, but she would never be here, um, convinced me to watch Ted and Ted 2, right? which are a
Mhm.
Seth MacFarlane joint. So it obviously is going to be a Seth MacFarlane joint. It's basically a live action episode of Family Guy, whatever, right? But the thing is that by and large, they were very funny. I had a couple of moments of serious laughing. I was like, damn, this is way better than I thought it would be.
I mean, everything Seth is doing but Family Guy is funny.
Right.
And again, I'm still completely shocked that Seth MacFarlane has a better Frank Sinatra voice than anybody else alive today for singing.
But with that in mind, it's like, Mark Wahlberg. Well, he was Marky Mark and Funky Bunch. Is he really a funny guy? Is he going to be able to really sell that? And it's like, no, he's actually got some comedic acting chops. It's just he errs on the side of lowbrow humor. And you know what? That's okay. Sometimes it's fun to just sit back, watch trash, and have a wonderful time.
I mean, this was a movie where the opening sequence, somebody was putting a condom onto a dildo to demonstrate the effective use of putting a condom on a penis.
I mean, at least they were classy enough to use a dildo and not a banana.
No, they also used banana later in the movie.
Of course.
A banana with a set of strawberries, I believe it was.
Oh,
Or maybe it was a set of
that's double
plums.
slick. That's extra funny. Cucumber.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Uh,
I
but
do wish we had Ayrton here. He's our professor of dick studies.
he would have liked talking about this movie because it's right up his alley.
Oh yeah.
But we're going to talk about the movie that was so good that it got stolen and then put on all the pirate sites.
Oh yeah. One of the few times that something made it in release and I watched it very quickly after release.
We'll talk a little bit later about the theft of the Avatar movie and its being released to the people. But you saw it first, so why don't you tell me your whole vibe about the Avatar movie?
Well, should we go over the plot or should we try to restrict the plot so people who haven't seen it can still see it before it's gone?
Well, I mean, first I think we're going to talk about our feelings
Mm.
because I think the feelings are more interesting than the plot.
My feeling was coming away from it, and mind you, there's a bunch of deeper stuff we'll talk about, but if you're talking about what was my actual vibe, how did I actually feel about it? It was a big episode of Avatar: The Last Airbender and not a very good one that anyone would remember. The emotional context was lacking. The plot was predictable. It was very by the numbers. It was not risky at all. And while I understand that because let's face it, Avatar has had a rough history in film,
And it's going to get worse in TV.
and it's going to get worse in TV. The fact of the matter is that while it is acceptable to play it safe, you don't want the people watching it to come away feeling like you were playing it safe. You know what I mean?
Hmm? So first, I'm going to talk about an idea that they had a lot of in Korra, and they talked a lot about this idea, but they didn't actually, execute this idea. The feeling that non-benders are oppressed by benders. And this is a necessary component of what drives the. I think they're the secondary antagonists, realistically, of the movie. Would you say that's fair?
Yeah.
So we don't get to see non-benders being oppressed by benders. We have one of the key members of our team being a non-bender and being completely normal. So I don't think this idea works even in Korra's degraded and degenerate state of the Avatar universe.
Okay, so we could talk at great length about what Korra doesn't work about, because I ramble about that on the sub. But I want to talk about why it doesn't work in this film specifically. Do you happen to recall? Because I don't. What is the rating on this film?
I think it's a PG-13.
PG-13. So, to understand what's wrong here, I need to compare this real quick segue to the Phantom Menace, right? The
Mhm.
Trade Federation takes control of Naboo. The uh, Jedi get the Queen off of Naboo. The Trade Federation is trying to lure the Queen back, and the intimation is made that the Trade Federation has put on the Reich. They got camps, they're gathering up the people, they are, quote, unquote, processing them, without ever saying what that is, right? And all of this is because in Phantom Menace, which is largely a film for children, they can't really tell you what putting on the Reich looks like, nor can they actually use the words the Reich. They can't say, thousands are already dead, Your Highness, you have to come home.
I
Right?
mean, they could also be going the slavery room. It's not just dead.
Right,
Slavery is also an option.
right. So let's talk about Avatar. Let's go back to our actual source material here for a minute. You have this idea that the Fire Nation was conquering its neighbors, that it was an imperialist power. Okay.
Mhm.
What did that imperialism look like? Well, it was evil conquest by the Fire Nation. Right, but what were they actually doing? And there are a couple of episodes where they show how the Fire Nation, the first people conquered were the Fire Nation, right? And, state mandated schools, state structures, your lives are not your own, you belong to the state type deal, right? But then you don't see that in the Earth Kingdom. You don't see that in the conquered parts of the Water Kingdom. You only have this vague notion, albeit shown excellently, of the absolute destruction of the air nomads by a totalitarian power, right? So you could actually posit that in a post-war world, and then this film is only set like what 10 years after the previous series. You could argue that the idea of Bender-led oppression is fresh in the minds of the people if you actually committed to the bit that the Fire Nation was an unbalanced statist society where benders, even non-fire benders, got to have a higher position in the social order than non-benders, and non-benders had grinding labor, oppression, and brutality. But they never
But
do that
no, never
because
do.
because that's too heavy for a kids cartoon. That's too
Also,
heavy for this movie.
the fans decided Zuko got a redemption arc at the end of the series, and you can't have a redemption arc on. We may have done some war-based slavery, and we
Well,
have
no, you
slave
do.
camps.
You do. You have all of this is his dad's fault, right? So you say, yeah,
And
the
his
previous Fire
grandfather's
Lord was a
fault.
piece of shit, and I'm trying to fix it. But
But
they want to. But I mean, this is the logic. They want to make Aang into Abraham Lincoln, right? And they think that Abraham Lincoln did it alone with just a single proclamation. Like there was an entire abolitionist movement. Like there weren't a multitude of people involved in ending unpleasant historical practices, right? Zuko didn't just go home, become Fire Lord, and say, okay, guys, all of our sins are both ended and forgiven. And quite frankly, his grip on power is probably really, really thin. Because, any other sufficiently powerful firebender can become Fire Lord. The only reason he's not got overthrown is because if you overthrow Zuko, the Airbender and his friends will show up to correct you.
well, I mean, Zuko is a very, very skilled firebender at that point.
Oh, absolutely. I'm not implying he couldn't hold on to power. What I'm saying is that the idea of the nations or the world that's been left following the war that's actually in the TV series is a lot more tenuous than they want you to believe.
Sure, but to me, the issue here is fundamentally they don't do the work because even the
Right.
Fire Nation, even the militaristic, fascistic Japan Fire Nation for the original show, it didn't dictate the lives of the people to that degree.
Well,
Uh,
let's use a really old comparison. It's become niche, but it's solid. Exo Squad.
yeah,
Exo Squad is a World War II narrative. You've got the Nazi like Neo Sapiens, and you've got the not quite Alliance Exo fleet, right? And they have multiple episodes about life behind the lines on a conquered Earth, so they can establish their Earth resistance storyline. And one of the main characters is the girlfriend of a leader of the resistance who is a collaborator, and
mhm.
they straight up make out that it's like, yes, she was collaborating and she was doing everything right to survive. And as soon as she was no longer useful, the Neo Sapiens put her right in the fucking camps because they totally show you people being liberated from work camps. Now they don't show you corpses, they don't show you the horrific injury, but like the people in the camps are in ragged clothing and dirty, and it's very clear that they are working them to death. Contextually. And that was 30 years ago now.
Mhm.
30 years ago we could show you people being ground into death by the boot. But we can't do it today.
When people
And
are more concerned about fascism today,
right.
it's almost like that's bullshit. So that's my first real problem with the film. My second real problem with the film is the airbenders are Buddhist monks, essentially. I don't buy Aang being so deeply connected, especially with what we later see in the movie, the Air Nomad philosophy, to this sense of nostalgia and lost home. It doesn't make sense.
All right. So again, we have to use Star Wars as our guideline, oddly enough. Like a lot of things have been compared to Avatar: The Last Airbender, and that's its a weakness is copying Avatar. Like Ruby wants to be Avatar and is doing it badly. Avatar does Star Wars badly.
Mhm.
Okay.
I mean,
Star-
first of all, Ruby's entire animation budget is 5 Subway sandwich coupons.
I mean, yeah, that doesn't help. But I'm gonna start with a hot take. Maybe this will inspire 20 people to come and scream in our comments and tell me how wrong I am. Luke Skywalker is a shitty Jedi.
I mean, if we go only with what's in the movies, yes, but he doesn't really get to show a
Oh,
whole lot in the
oh
movies.
no, I mean expanded lore as well. He becomes a master eventually, right? But there's
Mhm.
a lot of work he still has to do to get there, right? I'm saying when we actually look at it from an objective stance, right? He got a couple of years of training from some very skilled masters, made some mistakes, right? But had a ultimately still forming and pretty idealistic interpretation of what the Force was, right? As a latecomer, he was too old for the training, right? So then we look at Aang. Now Aang actually underwent education and was a prodigy, right?
Mhm.
Uh, and he understood air nomad theology, but he's not got and never got the 100 years of excellence that he should have gotten to be an actual air master. He's figuring it out just like everybody else is theoretically figuring it out. If any of the non-bending air nomad aligned peoples fucking survived anywhere, right?
Hmm.
Um, and through this lens, we can see it's like he views air nomadism as this uh perfect form of pacifism, right? With light and flowing and easy air and everything is happy because that was his life experience as a child, right? The plot of this story hinges on not only him uncovering the nature of another previous avatar in the avatar incarnation cycle, but encountering another air nomad that he has to hatch from a time bubble, right? And the guy has a range of more ancient, more antiquated notions about what air nomadism is. Now, they do some ass pull later, but we're not going to talk about that immediately. What what I'm getting at though is that okay, the writers of Avatar wanted to base the air nomads on Buddhists with a heavy dose of Tibetan monks. Fine. You are familiar with the history of mountain temple Buddhists in Japan and China, right?
Were you asking me or just like saying that?
I was asking you offhand in case you did know, but if you don't, they were some of the consistently most violent, radical revolutionaries in China
Mhm.
and Japan. They
Mhm.
consistently defied the government,
Yes,
right?
which is why the Fire Nation destroyed them.
Right. When we apply that to Avatar logic, it's like, yeah, the air nomads might have spoken about peace, but they believed in practical and violent solutions to problems, which is an undercurrent of this film that in fact itself points out the flaw. A previous Avatar tried to impose a Air Nation led polity as a quote utopia, right?
Well, let's back up a little bit about this. So
Yeah,
we're having a second secret avatar. There's a
right.
problem with this as a plot device. If you have an unbroken chain of memories, of reincarnation memories, and that's a feature being the avatar,
Yeah,
you can have one get hidden. You can have a war doctor, but you
yeah,
can't have 18 different war doctors. Those don't work. So that's a problem I have with this situation in the text of the film,
right.
and it again goes to attachment. I feel Aang is too attached to his past in a way that's not appropriate for his character.
Oh, absolutely. This is where we start to get into what I was arguing on the Substack. I said I would bring it up, which is retroactive canonicity, where you use deconstruction to change established canon to justify future failed canon, right? If we go back to the end of Avatar: The Last Airbender, M. Night Shyamalan made his movie. M. Night fucked the pooch, and while that could have killed the animated feature series right there, right?
Hmm?
Nobody blamed the guys at Avatar for that film. Everybody said, "Oh, this is Nickelodeon. This is studio. This is a live action thing. We have our cartoon at home. Thank you. Go die." Right? People
Hmm?
blamed M. Night Shyamalan, and he's been grinding out doing low budget horror films ever since. He also did After Earth, and I think that pretty much killed any opportunity he was going to have for getting somewhere. But you know what I mean.
Hmm?
Then they did Korra, and everybody was really excited for Korra. I was like, because I was never really the biggest Avatar fan, right? But even I will admit that it is hard to screw up a series that's going to follow a brown muscle mommy. There's a there's a subset of humans that are degenerate, but they will follow that into a cave and get set on fire. Right?
I mean, we can go back and discuss all the reasons that Core failed from
Right.
design.
Right. But I'm not going to get too deep into that. That's you want to go watch ER's multi-phase thesis? Feel free.
There are multiple people who share that thesis, including me.
Well, yes, but
But
I actually think ER's is pretty solid. Um, the thing is that they wanted to pose when they introduced the idea of Avatar 1, the first Avatar, that essentially avatars have made mistakes in the past, which was not earth-shaking because we had, Fire Lord Sozin. And that the avatar cycle was intrinsically interfering with a natural state of being. The avatar is unnatural, right? And
right,
now they have used the Aang film to further exemplify this. Every step of the way, they are trying to justify why Korra's a fuck up, and therefore essentially a victim of the Avatar cycle by making her predecessors worse. So that when they eventually get to the new series, where guess what? Korra caused a Mad Max future and everything is awful, they can say, well, this was inevitable. This was the plot. This was always the plan, right? The
mm.
the Jedi must end, right? It's not that we laid an egg and screwed the pooch. No, it's that you just aren't aware enough. You don't have enough of the total picture to understand how really brilliant our idea was to make a character that was utterly unlikable, who achieved nothing and did more damage than she solved.
Now I do want to move from the next real feeling thing I have.
Uh-huh, uh-huh.
Dave Batista was terrible in the choice they made for
Oh
him.
my God, that was Batista?
That was Dave Batista.
God.
Dave Batista was the primary antagonist in this movie.
I can't blame him though.
It's a bag of money.
It's a bag of money, and here's the thing. The one of the better villains in Korra, arguably, was uh the guy who was the lead singer of Black Flag, whose name just fell out of the back of my head. He's a poet laureate. The thing is that he's also
You
a
mean Henry Rollins?
yeah, Rollins. The thing is that Rollins actually has an extensive voice acting repertoire. He was Mad
Mm-hmm.
Stan in Batman Beyond,
Yeah.
right? And that's not the only thing he's done. Rollins has done a lot of voice acting. Rollins knows how to project a character in an animated feature. Dave Batista is Dave Batista. Everything I've seen Dave Batista be in, except when he was Drax the Destroyer, he was basically playing Dave Batista.
He has some range. There've been a couple parts he's done some range in.
Right, but we're right back to the decision making behind how something is made versus the actual way it is made. And it's like,
Well, here's the thing.
we need a star. We need a somebody. Who can we get? Well, we can get Dave Batista. He works cheap. I mean,
I think the script was exactly the way he delivered it,
right.
and he tends to be very deferential to directors.
Which means they like working with him.
So that's why I think Dave's performance was so flat in places. But
I mean, it doesn't help that the characterization itself was flat. So
yeah, and so the gang and the principal antagonist go to a magic island find the magic thing to be able to do other magic things.
Yeah.
This was the whole. And there's nothing wrong with a movie's plot being that simple, but it inserts the idea that um, the Airbenders for a little while did a Fremen, and
Yeah.
the Avatar was Paul Muad'Dib, and I don't care for that. I don't care for that at all. It's
Uh,
getting further away from the core of what makes the Avatar brand
Well,
the Avatar brand.
well, this is what I mean by retroactive canonicity, right? Let's walk through this. So the Airbenders did a Fremen. Okay. Uh, Avatar Kyoshi's sins are said to be living too long. Like that's
Mm-hmm.
a sin, right?
Mm-hmm.
But it's like, no, I'm sorry. She set up the Dai Li. The rot was in from the beginning, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then, of course, Fire Lord Sozin organized the Fire Nation. So the implication here is that each time the Avatar has moved through a different national polity, their nation has become preeminent on the wheel,
Mm-hmm.
right? So the only thing we don't have, as far as I recall, is we don't actually have a story of that one time that the Water Nation tried to extort, control, and dominate its neighbors. Because
Well,
everybody
that
else
was
is doing it.
because that was what was actually going to happen in season 2 of Korra, and then they decided to reboot the entire metaphysics of the series.
Right. Because well, again, because there's a multiple ways they did this, because they don't understand Chinese philosophy and they don't want to actually engage it.
And also, it's a lot harder to make an argument about class involving magical powers when magical powers require a lot of skill, in the dedication and precision to learn. It just doesn't work.
Well, no, it does, but this is also the nature of the problem. Okay, let's dip into Korra again, just a minute. So in season one, you have the Equalists with Spike Spiegel's voice behind
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Amon. And the idea is that Darth Vader is trying to lead the popular revolt against Benders as an oppressive majority, right? And it doesn't work because the oppression is not overt. Not in Republic City, which everyone says is fantasy New York, but frankly, culturally, it's the fucking Boxer Rebellion,
It is. It
right?
is. Not that the people who are doing this show know.
Right. But I've always said that the reason you couldn't do the equalist justice is because in America you can't have a story that starts with the idea that the commies had a point. Right? I'm not saying the commies have a point philosophically. I'm not saying the commies have a point unilaterally. I'm saying that when a monarchy is in collapse, right?
Mm-hmm.
The communists availed themselves of a popular discontent,
I
right?
mean, I also don't think that movement was strictly communist in the way they were framing it.
It was not. But the reason I bring this up is because you want to show why why the non-bending population's upset. Instead of focusing on Republic City, the fantasy New York that was built in less than 50 years for the great leap forward that was Avatar, put it in the Earth Kingdom, okay? And have us deal with that rancid fucking bitch that was running the Earth Kingdom after Boomy died.
Well, actually, technically, it is in the Earth Kingdom. Technically,
Right, but it's clearly also an independent nation state unto itself. It's Shanghai
it's because
or
Aang
Hong
made
Kong.
it's because Aang made it its own island.
Right. But what I'm saying is that when you actually look at it culturally, right? The woman that took over after Boomy passed and was so impossibly vile that when Henry Rollins asphyxiated her to death, people cheered, right?
Mm-hmm.
Is basically the Dowager Queen of the what was it? The Qin dynasty at that point?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. She's a monster. She is awful. You want to present that the equalists have a point? Show that woman being a bitch before you prove the equalists are false and untrue. Because then the people following, the rank and file normal people, right, are the exploited. They're people upset about a status quo they can't do anything about, who got taken in by a liar, which happens in real life.
Or, you have all these migrants and refugees in the city, and you have gangs of benders who are, extorting them, and the cops are benders, and they're just normal people.
Right.
But again, they didn't want to focus on that.
Right. They utterly flopped all of the things. And as I ramble off on my Substack, the examples were there. Right? If you've seen Good, the Bad, and the Weird, or you've seen Kung Fu Hustle, or
Mhm.
or any of the other wuxia period pieces set in the right era or city, it's like, yeah, you can do fantasy Asian 1920s with magical fire martial arts. I'm down. Let's go. It's not that the ideas are bad. It's that the execution is piss poor across the board. But with that in mind, as getting back to our point, it's like you want to suggest that the Avatar empowers nations that become totalitarian, depending on which one gets the Avatar at a time. This invalidates the very notion of the Avatar as a symbol of hope and rejuvenation. The Avatar is not appearing to save us in our darkest moments. The Avatar is here to instigate our darkest moments and then clean up his mess. That's a horrible fucking story.
It's not good. It's not good. And I do also want to get to the characters.
Or
Um,
lack thereof.
they were all very Flanderized versions of themselves.
Well, I know
They
what we know why. We know why they're Flanderized. It's not even the script.
they swapped out the voice actors, which was a huge issue.
They swapped out the voice actors, and of the voice actors they chose, the voice actors were chosen either for their ethnicity or for their native traits. I'm sorry,
Or
people. I don't care that the voice actress for Top, who I'm not going to see as a voice actress, is also blind. That's kind of a piss poor reason to choose someone for a role.
well, first things first. Um, no one cares about voice actors. Well, there are very talented performers. Don't get me wrong. I have yet to meet a person who is earnestly, driven by the plight of the voice actors as their talents in the movie. I don't believe that person really exists. I believe it
The
became an artificial category complaint.
the problem is it's a sliding scale, and everyone's treating it like it's all the same, right? If I looked at you and I said Dan Kazaria, or is it Hank Azaria? Hank Azaria. You know who that is,
Mm-hmm.
and you might say, "Oh, he was a bunch of great voices on The Simpsons. We'll miss a poo," right? If I say Billy West, oh well, he was on Futurama. You've seen him in a bunch of other things. He was the voice of Robin on Teen Titans. Yeah, we're let's go. We love Billy West, right? And of course, you know, pour one out for the homie, uh, the voice of Bruce Wayne, whose actor I have also the name has slipped my mind, but
Kevin Conroy.
yeah, Kevin Conroy, right? Uh, the reason I named these specific three voice actors is that they are known as voice actors, and they're voice actors. They're the best in their field. We recognize them when they show up and go, "Oh, that guy." That's frankly what a voice actor lives for, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because to be fair, Henry Rollins, Mark Hamill, Dave Bautista, Sam Jackson, any famous actor who you meet as an actor, who then goes on to be a voice actor, is a voice actor second and an actor first, and you know them as an actor. Now, to be fair, there are actors who have been voice actors who I was introduced to them as voice actors and later became familiar with their works material, right? Keith David, for instance, right? Met Keith David in Gargoyles, met Keith David in the Spawn series, finally watched Keith David in a film and went, oh, it's pretty good. But the important point is that there are a mountain of voice actors out there that you will never know, that will never be known to you, whose voice acting talents will appear intermittently. And you're absolutely right. We never stop and go, oh, the voice of that guy, right? We should not treat the majority of voice actors like the very best voice actors in their industry because it's not fair either way. Do I think they perhaps deserve more rights on the creative end of things or more, more recognition of their talent? Sure. But there's a lot of nobodies to make one or two somebodies, you know? And specific to the Avatar film, the voice actors they already had, who they could have paid scale, right? Had played those characters for what, 5 years? However many seasons Avatar ran. They were,
It was like 9 total for the 2 series.
yeah, they were distinctly knowledgeable in those characters, not just in their what they actually say, but how they say it, their personality, how they respond to a stimulus, right? They would have, I'm gonna use that fancy fucking bullshit word. They would have elevated the script.
But the script editor doesn't work on the new project. The guy who's
Right.
the script editor for the show, and he did Dragon Prince, which was an odd duck of a show.
Oh God, I hate Dragon Prince so much.
But also then there's the broader problem of the tone and themes of Korra being smuggled into Avatar: The Last Airbender. So just everything feels wrong.
Right.
So we've talked enough in a non-spoilery way. Anybody who's watching this later, because no one's watching this right now, because we're in exile, so not that many people know we've been exiled to the Shadow Realm.
Right.
Uh, for you who watch later, this is your spoiler warning. Aang starts doing an Indiana Jones and stealing Airbender artifacts, and that all makes sense to me as a
Well,
character motivation.
let's clarify here for a moment because this is also very pertinent. They start the episode. I know it's a movie, but we're calling it an episode. They start the episode with Aang returning from an Indiana Jones because apparently, in the time after the war, rather than say organize the people or guide them or whatnot, this war weary nation that he supposedly has built through this thing called Republic City. He is instead running around collecting air nomad shit and spending a lot of time alone, away from his family, right?
Mhm.
Um, and so he is by himself when, oh no, the villains attack. Because the villains are, of course, ahead and know what he has acquired, and that it has a value to them that they want. So they attack the Avatar, which is already a bad idea, and they get away with the thing, right? And this is supposed to create for Aang the self-doubt that drives him on because I've got to go stop the bad guys. And I got to go stop the bad guys now before they do the bad thing. And it's all my fault.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Even though his friends are like, hey man, let us come with you. Let us help you. It's like, no, it's all on me. And it's like, dude, what happened to your character development? Because I seem to recall that you had an entire character arc where you were dealing with the stress that murdering the Fire Lord was on you, and your friends said, "No, man, we'll carry that weight with you." I seem to recall that plot element already being addressed.
Yes, yes. And so Aang and the gang go off on an adventure. Uh,
Right.
and my problem with Aang and the gang going off on an adventure is wasn't really anything for the rest of the Avatar team to do. And that's normally a sign that you had screwed up in your plotting.
Well, it's compounded by, let's be fair to the creators of this product, the projection the fans are putting on it, right? Uh, so Fire Lord Zuko is off being Fire Lord. He literally doesn't have to do anything because he's being a monarch, right?
Mm-hmm. He
Uh,
probably has a champion he could send to help his friend out.
right. But within the scope of it's the Avatar, it's like, his people are literally like, but boss, you have to do stuff here. He's like, no, I'm gonna go help my friend. They actually address the idea that the Fire Lord and the Avatar have a deeply personal relationship as friends, and I completely am okay with the idea that Zuko would drop everything, no matter what the fuck he's doing, to go help the Avatar. That was actually legitimately approached, right? And Katara, we have no idea what she's doing. Maybe she's being the mayor-s of Republic City, because Aang's not. But they're in a romantic relationship, so she wants to go help. Okay, legit. But what are the other two members of quote unquote Team Avatar doing? Well, Sokka apparently has forgotten all of his character development and is instead being a mad inventor living in a fucking hovel, being abused by children. I mean, his bicycle with the explosive payload will come in later, but there's no real reason for him to exist. Like, they didn't address and say, what exactly does Sokka do? Which was a massive criticism, by the way, of Korra in the episodes talking about Aang as administrator of the city, because Sokka was surprisingly absent. It's almost like the creators want you to forget he exists as well, right? Uh, and then it's like, okay, so what's Toph doing? How is Toph contributing? Toph apparently has returned to the Earth Kingdom and is a teacher, teaching people how to bend to prove that she's still the toughest badass in, let's face it, the least convincing set of circumstances. She's not wandering the world looking for the greatest challenges and fighting the most dangerous people. She's literally beating up her students and then patting herself on the back. And so when she gets the word, hey, Aang needs a hand, she's like, okay, I got nothing going on. I guess I can go. That's not ideal.
It's not ideal. No. And
But
and then
well, the
there's
reason I
the
well the reason I
dumb
mentioned
laser battle
the
at the end. So let's
real
not
quick,
forget that one.
real quick, the reason I mentioned the projection, by the way, is that people are asserting that Toph has her children by two different baby daddies, right?
That's actually in the comics.
Sure, but then they're also asserting that Zuko and Sokka were very gay for each other, which might also be in the comics. But frankly, everyone hates those comics. Why are we judging anything by those fucking comics, right? The uh, the important part is that everybody's trying to make this out to be like a not just a let's get the band back together, but everybody's sleeping with everybody thing, and it's like unnecessary because it doesn't fix any of the problems that you're about to describe.
So we end up with the MCU blue laser effect at the end of the movie, although it's a red laser, so that's something.
Do you mean the giant evil beam of doom, or the fact that they totally ripped off the last 10 minutes of Age of Ultron?
Yes, and also yes.
Okay. Um, so, because we are trying to describe the plot here. So Aang goes to the mountain that the villains are headed to find the thingamy. And what he finds is another airbender in a time bubble that he wakes up, because obviously we're not going to ask ourselves, why is he in a time bubble? We're just going to wake him up because he's an airbender. With the tangible negative that uh, Dave Batista is several hundred, if not 1,000 years more out of date than Aang is. And we never address that perhaps this is a bad idea or that we should give him some time to acclimate. We just need him, now that we have acquired Man MacGuffin, to go get other MacGuffin, because we need to make sure that we can get the MacGuffin, even though the MacGuffin is secure, before the bad guys get the MacGuffin.
And
Because I know you're about to dig in this, but I'll be clear. We're about to describe the giant island in the middle of the storm. If Aang and Dave Batista had done nothing, that MacGuffin would still be there, perfectly safe. The bad guys couldn't get through. That's why they wanted Dave Batista in the first place.
And for me, at a deep level here, the whole problem about, well, this other secret avatar set of a magical city in the past to make a utopia and give people bending abilities. It's meant to be a critique on Aang and Republic City, but we don't get to experience enough of Republic City to make that work. So all the major plot things they want are super undercooked.
Right. Compounded by predictable.
Mm-hmm.
So the reason that we go from MacGuffin A to MacGuffin B is it is revealed that Dave Batista, Avatar Batista, Airbender Batista, was the right hand man of the hidden Avatar, and that the hidden Avatar made a MacGuffin that allowed them to essentially do anything, but more accurately to bequeath air bending to other people. Right? And he was the first convert. Right? And so he is still on board with the air nomad should rule everything plan. Because he hasn't done any acclimation to the new world. He's just like, no, I'll get the stick, and then I'll rewrite reality, and everything will be fine.
And the conflict in his era was the Earth Kingdom becoming the more technologically advanced and problematic civilization, which really, really makes me ask a lot of questions about the future of Republic City.
Look, the Earth Kingdom seceded from the Union, and that's unacceptable.
So the animation was
all right.
Not good, not
on
great.
par.
So there wasn't really a whole lot to recommend this movie. So it makes sense to dump this onto streaming like it's a victim of a crime.
Well, that's the thing, is that I'm since we're gonna talk about it. Was it stolen? I don't know. Is it possible that they said, "Man, we're not even going to make back our money on streaming. Maybe we should just have this accidentally released"? that is entirely plausible.
But the parallel story wasn't developed. None of these things were thought out, the plot or the storyline. They incorporated the core themes. They mucked up the voice acting. This was a poorly thought out idea. But let's go into we're gonna go a little bit deeper here.
Okay.
But Joe, can you buy me a little bit of time? A couple minutes?
I mean, sure. I can talk about what the rest of the plot is. Um, so, as you may predict, when it is revealed that Avatar Batista or wannabe Avatar Batista is not actually the good man, he betrays Team Avatar, acquires the stick, gets the penultimate power likened unto a god, and then Avatar has to well, first and foremost, everybody gets killed. He straight up murks everyone. But Katara is able to bring them back from the dead with healing water. So literally he has to go in the Lazarus pit, right? But while he's in the Lazarus pit communing with the other avatars, he talks to the dead secret avatar who puts him on the path of the secrets. And we all know how this story has to resolve, which is he's going to take away the dude's bending. It's going to be a spirit bending plot. But instead, how it works out is the big bad goes to the secondary antagonists, makes them all airbenders, and then looses them to attack Republic City while he resummons ancient Acheron from the mists of time as a giant floating city with the intent to drop it on the new city, thus creating a new air nation once we've destroyed all the innocent people. It's literally Ultron's plan to drop Sokovia on top of Sokovia, right? Um, so Team Avatar has to fight all of these airbenders who have no experience in bending, but they got powers now, right? Which is literally fighting the small kid in the schoolyard because all of you are practiced benders. Sokka gets to show off his creative chops a little bit. And Aang has a 1v1 bro with Dave Batista where he gets a hold of the stick. And then everybody is worried for half a minute that Aang is going to be corrupted by the power because Aang is emotionally compromised and upset. But Aang pulls it together at the last minute and gasp, le shock, breaks the MacGuffin, thus releasing the power, thus taking away Dave Batista's wind powers and the wind powers of everyone else. And Dave Batista has a sad, we could have been friends death before he blows away into dust. Um, and thus, with no one having lost anything of consequence and no one being dead, the city is rebuilt. The city that was going to fall on them gets sucked back into the spirit world, and everything returns to a status quo so that they can go on the next adventure. Aren't we happy? Yay. Consequence-free conflict. And that was the movie, Larry.
That was the movie. And so I found an interesting video that I shared with you about science fiction and Star Trek legend DC Fontana
Yep.
during season 2 of the original series, writing a memo saying, "Hey guys, we're starting to lose the script."
Right.
So first, you said you did a deeper dive after watching the video.
I did a deeper dive. Um, because I found some of the things that were being said in this video dovetailed with some things that I had touched on or had researched and had commented on otherwise. Because the thing is that this memo that's being described again was during season 2 of Star Trek. Season 3 was a failure. Like, people forget there was a season 3 that was a half season, right? Uh, so you have DC Fontana at the high water mark saying, "Hey guys, we need to course correct on our material," right? Uh, One of the things that is commented in this video is that people were, quote, losing their discipline, the discipline of storytelling, right? And that actually cognates pretty hard with things I've heard about TNG, right? Because some of the old heads from original series trying to work with the new kids, that's right, think of Patrick Stewart as a kid, uh, on the set of TNG, they had a hell of a time because these were all post 70s actors, right? Who had a little bit more of a relaxed view of acting, who didn't necessarily approach it the same way that the old heads were used to, right? So I get it. I get where this commentary is coming from. The thing is that I can only compare it to the Kazon from Voyager. Now, if you guys aren't familiar, the Kazon were a race created by Jerry Taylor. Jerry Taylor is not a nobody. Do you know Jerry Taylor?
I do.
Right. She wrote 17 episodes of TNG, 3 episodes of DS9, and 14 episodes of Voyager. She also has producing credits on TNG and Voyager, helped with the novelization of the episode Unification, right? She got the Star Trek Award. She was an Emmy nod in '94 and has done a multitude of interviews and the like. Okay, this woman was as important as GC Fontana for the TNG generation, right? And I
Although
want,
DC Fontana has deeper credits
oh,
overall.
absolutely. But I want to read from Memory Alpha here real quick. Uh, a blurb. It's a couple of paragraphs, okay? The idea for the Kazon started to be conceived during secretive development meetings between Rick Berman, Michael Pillay, and Jerry Taylor, from which Star Trek Voyager began to be created. The series co-creators originally conceived the Kazon as a contemporary Los Angeles street gang. Jerry recalled, I felt that with the Kazon, we needed to address the tenor of our times and what was happening in our cities, and recognizing as a source of danger and social unrest. We wanted to do that metaphorically. One factor in in this anthology was that the trio wanted to have infighting between alien gangs. Pillier commented, "Our intention was to create a sort of disorganized anarchy, them against them as much as them against us." The earliest material evidence of the Kazon concept was one of many summaries that Jerry Taylor wrote about their developmental conversations written while they were ongoing. The specific summary in which the idea was first written about was dated 10th August 93 and read, "Maybe there are gangs who are the villains. They don't respect the Prime Directive and interfere with many non-warp cultures. They come in and squat on a planet. They're basically bullies." The same set of notes also posited at least two street gangs, the Crips and Bloods, in groups in competition for influence. The terms used to refer to these two groups were intentionally meant to be as preliminary shorthand names. In August '93, Jerry Taylor wrote another summary, including a statement: "The Crips have a rival for more for territory. They vie for new worlds, wiping out people on the way. Maybe on some planets they get along with the native population, but generally they begin, like skinheads, to practice ethnic cleansing." As highlighting the in the As highlighted in the same summary, Taylor and a few series co-creators were considering the possibility that, in the pilot episode of the forthcoming Star Trek series, the main series characters might form a truce with one of the gangs, making the other gang an enemy for the rest of the series. The document went on to state, "Perhaps there are three gangs, with constantly shifting relationships and alliances. Just as we think we have it sorted out, the balance shifts again." This goes on for much longer, and I'm not going to go into the whole thing, but the overall presentation of information here from another Star Trek luminary, right,
Hmm.
not only reflects what we see in modern Trek that we have rambled on here about at great length and complained about, which is the presentism of Star Trek. We got to talk about modern social issues, right?
Hmm.
But also a fundamental misunderstanding of the material they're working with, right? if you actually talk to someone from California, or myself being from Washington State and an hour south of Hilltop, the famously dangerous Crip uh, uh,
Mhm.
holdfast, if you likened the Crips and the Bloods to skinheads, you are way off fucking base.
Yeah.
Right?
But I kind of want
Uh,
to tune in a little bit more on the
yeah.
specific complaints what
Feel free to tighten it
Fontana
up.
said.
Yeah.
Because she was talking about how Star Trek wasn't taking risks and it wasn't
Right.
maintaining its brand identity, the core stuff that makes the series work.
Right.
And I feel like modern Trek focuses a lot on that first half of the complaint. That it's not taking risks. And they took some risks with Next Generation once they got through the original series old scripts that were there. And they obviously took a lot of risks with DS9. They took more risks with Voyager. They took risks with Enterprise. They took risks with Kurtzman era Trek. But I would say, with the exception of Enterprise, which has a real Enterprise has an excuse, they abandoned the brand, the focal point of what made Trek Trek, and those everything that
Well,
came after that point.
well, here's the thing, because I think this coincides with what I was rambling on about with the Kazan. Um, there's taking risks, and then there's taking safe risks.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that Star Trek has a real problem, especially in modern Trek, with safe risks. Okay?
They take lots of unsafe risks.
No, they take lots of safe risks. That's the problem.
Well, no, I disagree. Let me use Enterprise as an example.
Sure, let's use Enterprise as an example.
So one of the core founding ideas in the prequels of Trek that they had set up is the Earth Romulan War, which led to
Yep.
eventually the formation of the Federation. But instead of doing that, which would have been the safe risk, they did a time travel plot in a temporal Cold War, and they did an entirely new alien race that's also connected to the Time War that attacked Earth and the Federation. I think all of those were way riskier, and none of those were safe choices.
Right. But what I'm talking about is we'll use a 30-year-old example, and then we'll use a modern example. 30 years ago in DS9, you had an episode where Dax encountered the wife of one of her previous hosts, and
Mm-hmm.
they had a flirtation. There was a possibility of a renewed relationship, even though it was taboo, and they had their infamous Star Trek lesbian kiss. Of course, it
Mm-hmm.
landed like a wet fart because it was what, a month after Ellen DeGeneres' gay kiss and a week after Roseanne's gay kiss, because gay
Un-
kiss was the outrage of moment that really was a safe argument.
Unfortunately, they didn't realize those other shows were going to get out there first when they
Right.
plotted out the script.
Sure, we'll give them the credit of not being all seeing and all knowing. But then this was also the era when you had gay as folk and
Mm-hmm.
lots of pushing the boundaries about gay and hetero social relationships. Dharma and Greg was on TV, right?
Mm-hmm.
The question of homosexuality was hot button 30 years ago.
But also, I don't think because of all those things you said, the Jadzia kiss, especially the way it was set up in the show, was risky at all.
Right. But here's the thing. We then jump to Kurtzman era Trek, and they're like, all right, we're going to make a character. Okay. It's going to be a Klingon. Okay. He's not going to be like other Klingons. Okay. What's his deal? He's going to be gay and soft. It's like, right. But that might have been upturning the boat 30 years ago. Not only is that not upturning the boat now, that is both putting the boat on even keel and then throwing an anchor behind it and expecting forward momentum. No
And
one was
I
impressed by gay Klingon.
and I would say that Jaden, was a unsafe risk.
See, I don't think
And
Jaden was an unsafe risk. I think Jaden was a very safe risk.
no,
And
no,
that's
here's
and that's and that's considering that on this show we have actually said he's one of the better characters on that dumpster fire.
yes, but here's why Jaden is an unsafe risk.
Okay.
Number one, you focus on him being gay as opposed to the actual meaningful things to his character and how his character functions on the show.
Right.
You also take away elements of Klingon storytelling by saying, well, he's from the section of Klingons that follows extremely unusual marital practices that were only picked to highlight people who might be in weird poly relationships. So again, that's an unsafe risk because it draws attention to those things and not to the product. So if you're drawing
Mm.
attention away from the product, it's an unsafe risk.
So at this point, though, are we actually talking about specific risks or are we talking about behaviors? In psychology, you do inventories and you talk about how they derive data on a statistical level, right?
Well, let's
And
let's go let's go back to OG Trek,
yeah,
the infamous Uhura Kirk kiss.
right, very fucking risky at the time.
Very risky at the time, but it meant something in the show. It drew
Yeah,
attention to the product, which
right,
made it an unsafe risk. It made it a reasonable risk. And to give a safe risk, which was mentioned in the video, was the time they went to What If Rome, Modern America, and Modern World, when
right.
actually the sun worshippers weren't worshiping the star, they were worshiping the Son of God. That was a safe risk. Even though it went
Right.
against Gene's ethos, that's what the risk part comes in. It says, hey, they got Space Jesus. Space Jesus is a thing that can happen. People will worship Space Jesus. So that's where I think we're differing on the safe versus unsafe risks.
Well, let's use another show because it is indeed a show deserving of being spoken of in the same breath. Let's use the Orville for a minute,
Okay.
right? So, first and foremost, you have an episode where the Orville just does a Star Trek, right?
Well, I mean, they
They,
had
they,
several episodes where the Orville just as a Star Trek.
yeah, but the one I'm referring to specifically is they did the one where they're all the people are living on a colony ship that is multi-generational
Yes.
with a damaged array and they don't know it, right? That is a pretty safe risk because it's a Star Trek episode. We all loved it. It was very heartwarming to go back to like, you know what? Remember when Trek was good? Like this.
And
Right?
it was also a very basic bitch sci-fi.
Right.
It was only
So
risky because sci-fi had drifted so far from those sorts of core competencies.
so then they have an episode where they take an actual tangible risk. They said, "Hey, what if there was a world where people used astrology to determine social class?" Right? And
Mm.
actually addressed, like in practical, it's like, wow, this is awful. These people are awful, and they're going to kill some of our people. That is extra bad. Um, and the result was the planet decided to turn inward. They stopped talking to the outer world because the rest of the world didn't believe in their beliefs. It was kind of a downer ending, but it was a risk to have a downer ending with
Mhm.
no clear answer because you couldn't just look at it and say, ah, well, the Federation, of course, is 100% correct because the Union in the Orville doesn't even have the high-minded ideals of the Federation. They are completely at odds with like, man, I don't know how to fix this. I can't fix this. This is just broken, right?
Exactly. Exactly.
But then in the latter seasons of the Orville, we decide that we are going to stop everything and take a fan favorite character, the Mocklin Bortis, and we are not only going to emphasize his gay relationship with his gay husband, who's actually a
Well, I mean,
wife,
I
right?
mean, it's
But
the wife part was the risky thing.
right. But we are going to go all in on this trans obliteration narrative with their child, who is going to become the most obnoxious, unwelcome, unfunny part of this preachy fucking show.
The thing is, that was a risk that was unsafe.
It was a
It
very unsafe risk, and it showed in the loss of people watching. People didn't want to watch it to be preached about how this little brown child was being abused by her people.
well, the initial thing was a classic sort of Star Trek moral dilemma thing. It was a safe risk.
Right, but then they didn't leave it alone. They just expanded
Right,
it out and expanded
right.
it out and
No,
expanded it out.
reopening the scab again. That was the unsafe risk part for this plot line.
Yeah.
Now let's go to the second half of what DC Fontana laid out, the core of the show.
Yeah.
And you know, with Trek, the core of the show was a humanistic society that used science and wit and charm to solve problems. That's the core engine of the show, which they abandoned a little bit in Deep Space Nine. They were able to mitigate the danger of that risk by having a war plot. How does high-minded humanitarian values how do they survive under the pressure of war? So that was on brand, but they worked to make it on brand. Then there was Voyager, which was okay, but they're stranded in outer space. And then they abandoned it when they got to Enterprise. Well, it's a prequel. You have to show how they got there. And it never recovered from there. The actual brand, the elements of the brand that had value, never recovered from that deviation.
Right.
And I think everybody's focused on the risks and how Star Trek needs to push the envelope as a science fiction show, which I can agree with, but it doesn't focus on the brand, on what made Star Trek good. The video we were referring to, it talked about how the Kirk, McCoy, Spock triad
Right.
was becoming more the Kirk show. Because, I mean, Bill Shatner, when he was in his prime of his life, he had a lot of charisma, a lot of charm. And while Leonard Nimoy had charm, it wasn't as gregarious and outward. And of
Right.
course, Kelly was just a really good actor. And he was also good friends with Gene from back in other TV shows they had worked on together. And Gene had gotten him his first big break. So he had deep loyalty to Gene and would just, he was all in on whatever Gene wanted.
Yeah.
So that's where I think the thesis of what Fontana was talking about comes into play. But what was interesting is it mentioned, I believe it was it that Roman one, or was it, there was another episode they mentioned that was controversial where
A private little war, the one that's
a
the
private little
Vietnam
war.
era analog.
Yeah. Which the interesting thing is Kanan, who wasn't even, he didn't even have that much clout on the show at the time. He was saying, I think we've kind of stepped over the boundaries a little bit here. And I think that's very interesting, especially considering some of the rumors about Kurtzman Trek where you weren't really able to talk back about things and how a lot of the new pop culture movies and TV from the 2015s to present is focused on talent that doesn't have a lot of experience,
Well,
who
we know
doesn't
this.
have the cachet to say no.
Well, not only did we know this for a truism in Trek, but we knew this for a truism in other media, because other media trying to talk about the Hollywood experience has talked about it. So Nimoy was also a Roddenberry regular. They had worked on some westerns, right?
Mm-hmm.
And Nimoy, when he was very popular in the Star Trek era, famously was on a talk show and he talked about the Vulcan neck pinch and how it was developed, right? And basically, you imagine there's the writer's room, there's Gene, there's everybody. He's like, this script says I just kind of go up and hit the guy. I'm
which
a
was kind of
Vulcan, and
yeah.
I'm supposed to be really advanced. Like maybe I could do a judo type maneuver, and he just falls over. We're supposed to be more advanced and less violent now, right? And
Mhm.
you imagine Gene going, "Yeah, that sounds real good. Do that. Let's give it a shot." Right? Um, what you hear in behind the scenes Hollywood stuff now is it's always the same thing. Actors come on set, they want to stretch their wings, they want to do something amazing, they get the script, they think the script is ass, right? And they either play what they're given and continue, or they try to spread their wings, and often the story is actually about how they do it really bad and lose out because their ideas are not necessarily welcome. Best example of that, actually, this very start of Wonder Man. Wonder
Yes.
Man's got a bit part. They're like, okay, say your lines. And really, he should just say his lines. They're not even that bad, right?
No.
But he's trying
But
to reinvent the wheel and screwing himself over as he does it.
it's like, what's my character's motivation? And I think you should have this book and this and that. And it just
Right,
becomes a tedious ass to work.
right. And the answer is that the reality's got to be somewhere in the middle. You have to have enough flexibility to make proposals, but you also need to know that's like, man, look, sometimes buckle down, do the role, smile through the pain, and just continue working.
Mm-hmm. But what I find also fascinating about this video
Yeah.
is the siege mentality of Star Trek has been with the show since the beginning. It was season 2 where Gene did the fan campaigns to keep Star Trek on the air, and then the conventions. So I also wonder how much this bad institutional knowledge has filtered into Trek as it is today. That
Well, this
people
is.
say
Go ahead.
oh well, the fans are always like this, and you gotta have this with Doctor Who too. Fans were always complaining, and there's a truth to that more in Doctor Who, in my opinion, than with Star Trek.
Well, this is what I was saying before we you hit record just at the beginning of the show. Guys, we meet just before the show and we kind of talk about what we're going to talk about. It's weird. We do a little bit of work on the show before we go live.
Mm-hmm.
I said I was going to talk about this idea that Star Trek is suffering a crisis of faith, right? And a lot of people, upon hearing that, would immediately jump to, this is about the failure of secular humanism. It's not that. Oh well,
It's about faith of the heart.
oh, I mean, sure. Do you have faith in the heart? No, I don't have faith in the heart. It's faith in Star Trek as a brand, right?
Mm-hmm.
Everybody wants to find the smoking gun. How did we get to Kurtzman, right? And so the natural inclination is, oh, well, we'll go as far back as we can. We'll find the oldest evidence of troubled waters, and that's got to be when it started, because it has to be a progressive corruption, right? Right? It's got to be one thing leads to another thing intentional that causes a thing to collapse, right? Except that's not true. That is desperately trying to create a system of evils to protect your ideology, to protect your faith, the thing that you've dedicated your time to, right? Because what's actually going on,
Mm-hmm.
right, is in the beginning there was what was Marvel? Timely Comics once upon a time?
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's
Timely
timely
became
comics.
Timely became Marvel. Marvel had the Marvel bullpen, and the idea was is that all the writers and the artists and Stan and Jack would get in there, and they probably did some drugs, and they would hash out a dozen stories before lunch, and it was going to be a fist fight,
Mm-hmm.
right? Because it's a bullpen. We're going to lock horns. We're going to get that good stuff out, and it did work for a while, right? But at some point, who knows when, uh, as they started to shift more towards event-based comic books. So we could say that this started after the Dark Phoenix, because Dark Phoenix was the big one, right?
Hmm.
Uh, you have less bullpen get-togethers, and we start seeing more of the corporate retreat. We're gonna go back. We're gonna go to a place. We're gonna leave the city. We're gonna get out of things. No cell phones. No contacts. We take a weekend. We're gonna drink booze. We might do some drugs. There might be prostitutes, and we're going to lay out the plan for the next years of story. The next two events for the next 4 quarters. Right? Sounds legit, but what's not there? That vigor. That no ideas will be refused. All ideas will be discussed and fought over. Instead, it's now based on precedent, who's very important in the room, right? And it's based very much like the Hollywood system on agreeability, right? It's a big game of yes and. So like what if we took away Spider-Man's marriage? Oh, and what if it was the devil that did it? Oh, and what if we used it as a generalized reset to send Peter Parker back 20 years, right? At no time does anyone feel comfortable enough to say, are we making a mistake? Because counter opinions would be adversarial, they'd be antagonistic, right?
For example, but he's been married to Mary Jane at the point of One More Day more than half the run of the character.
Right.
It's like hollowing out something of the character. It's like
So,
Superman wasn't married to Lois for all that long when the marriage happened, but he'd been with Lois since day one.
right.
That'd be like if Superman said, I'm not attracted to Lois anymore.
But this ultimately brings us to this idea that it's like no one individual, well, we might blame individuals for specific actions, no one person decided, let's screw this Star Trek franchise to death. That didn't happen.
I
But a
mean,
multitude of small decisions made over decades, making compromises here and small adjustments there, back and forth, and the give and take between fans and creatives and studios put in the weaknesses that eventually undermined the building that was Star Trek.
for example, uh, the Kirk McCoy triad problem.
Right,
You know, Shatner became a big star, uh, and as such, it made sense for the network to move more attention to Shatner. 100% made
right.
sense. This in turn led to stories that became more Kirk focused. That's where Kirk started banging strange women on alien planets and all of that. And is that to my mind is where it goes wrong. Is you can, for a completely rational reason, this is the breakout star, we need to lean into it. But in doing so, you're going to completely screw up the formula.
Well, here's the thing. Let's expand upon that. So then we get to TNG, right? Picard's not enough of a leading man to actually lead it, even though Patrick Stewart's a very good actor. He's an older man. He doesn't look the part of action adventure hero. So we have Riker, right? But but it's still very much ensemble cast. There isn't actually a triad that makes the show, right? It's Picard, Riker, Data, Troy, the Doctor, because whether it's Pulaski or McFadden depends on what time you're watching. It's Worf, you know, it's an ensemble, and of course Geordi.
Mhm.
Um, and that worked for a while. Then you have DS9. Is DS9 an ensemble cast?
It is, but they tend to do ensemble with spotlight.
Right. And who gets the biggest spotlight?
I would say Cisco.
Right. the show doesn't work without Avery Brooks. It's actually built into the lore. Avery Brooks is the emissary. And
Hmm.
the entire emissary plot, though it runs through the entire series, although it largely doesn't fucking matter, still requires that the last two episodes of the series have to be Avery Brooks centric. It's about Cisco fighting the paw wraiths because they made him the central character. Now, I don't actually have a problem with the idea of a linchpin, and we are talking about different series. So DS9 having a spotlight character is not bad in the totality of Star Trek, right? But
Hmm.
then you can see the flaws when we look at Voyager. Voyager's not an ensemble. Voyager is all over the place, but they really want you to give a shit about Kate Mulgrew. And when they realize that people were not here for Kate Mulgrew, they really want you to care about Seven of Nine because they think that TNA and a female-led story is what you're here for.
But they should have made you care about Tom Paris because they had plans originally to give him the spin-off series.
Right. But then he's like, okay, well, what about Enterprise? It's like, Scott Bakula. It's like, is Scott Bakula the focus? Well, it's Scott Bakula and T'Pol and Tucker. It's like, is it though? Is it? And mind you, to be fair, Enterprise is a lot better at being ensemble.
Hmm.
Okay. But quite frankly, if you told me, hey Joe, we're doing a Star Trek revival series, it's gonna be Jeffrey Combs focused, and he's gonna reprise his role as Shram of the Andorian Royal Guard, I'm fucking there. Take all my money. I don't care. Right? Um,
Exactly.
they they understood that they had to have some give and take, right?
Hmm.
And they were flexible, but I don't think any one of these series did it so wrong that they were the thing that broke it, right? And when I say crisis of faith, I think that people are looking for the one thing. They want to find the demiurge. They want to find the Satan that ruined Star Trek forever. Um, and I have an unpopular answer.
Okay.
I put to you that Gene Roddenberry is the primary fault of why Star Trek doesn't work. Because Gene Roddenberry did one of the most awful things you can do as the steward of a long running franchise.
Okay.
Gene Roddenberry's dead. What?
I
What?
think some of the best Trek was the initial burst that happened after Gene died.
Oh, absolutely. But here's the thing. Here's the thing. I don't like the man, but we're gonna use him as the example. Tolkien died, but he made very explicit instructions about how Lord of the Rings was to be managed,
Hmm.
how Lord of the Rings was to be organized, and he put those tools into the hands of his family and his estate, who followed those instructions very
Until they give it
precisely
until they gave it to Amazon
until they
because
gave
they're
it to
all too
Amazon.
old.
Right, because by that point they were too old to hold on to it, and Christopher Tolkien was dead. Right?
Hmm.
In this sense, while Gene had a problem, that was Gene was holding back Star Trek pretty hard. Right? Gene, after 20-ish, 30-ish years working the convention circuit, doing drugs in Hawaii, and basically being a outcast from Hollywood, was not necessarily in the best place to steward Star Trek into its next evolution, right? But he was still a creative person. He still had great insights to give. There were things he could have done. And then he died, leaving a legacy in the hands of Brenna and Pillier, who didn't do badly with it, right? But basically leaving a I don't think it was as bad as the Succession Crisis, but there was a lot of ambiguity about who owns Star Trek. What is a Star Trek? Where does a Star Trek go? Right? And And that's what we have now. When we look at the Kurtzman era, what's going on? They're trying to possess Star Trek in the same way that the Kathleen Kennedy era is trying to possess Star Wars. The same way that other fronts are buying properties and then trying to control them through multimedia representations to officially tell you this is what your media is to you. And we've said before, we've talked about at great length, that is a policy that only ends in failure. And as we have 20 minutes here, Larry, I'm gonna hijack us from it. I'm gonna put you on the spot
Okay.
because I think this is pertinent. You're a fan. I have never seen you so angry, Larry. Tell me about what they're doing to the Ghost Who Walks.
I mean, they're race swapping the Phantom for a TV show, and that, that's just that's just Black Panther. They're turning the Phantom into Black Panther, and that's stupid.
Okay. So before you dig into this, I want to be extremely clear for whatever listeners we don't have in Exile. The Ghost Who Walks, uh, usually Kit Walker, is an inherited position
Mhm.
on the most objective level. If we stand way back, there is actually nothing wrong either with a Black Phantom, or B, someone wearing the Phantom's disguise to maintain the Phantom's legacy while the Phantom is like in a hospital with a busted leg or broken ribs or
Mhm.
whatever. If you told me a black guy was going to be the Phantom for a turn and then give it back to the Walker dynasty, I'd be like, okay, sure. So to be clear, we're not actually saying it is impossible to have a black Phantom,
I
but
mean, you
you're
can
right.
make it work,
It is
but it's a short term.
basically, but you are correct. It is basically Black Panther. My question is both one, why would you do that? You don't have to, and
Mhm.
two, why you, Larry? Why does this actually fire up your blood? You are the mellow one among our cast.
Well, it fires me up because I remember reading it in the comic strips, and the Phantom was a throwback pulp comic.
Right.
And here's the thing most people don't know. The whites in South Africa, some of them have lived longer in South Africa than the black people in South Africa. A lot of the black people in South Africa, that led to them becoming the majority, migrated there to work for the white people. So saying, oh, well, we can't have a white character fighting bad guys in Africa, white people have been part of Africa. It's a naive and limited worldview, number one. Number two, if I recall correctly, the original Kit Walker was on a boat that got marooned by pirates,
Yeah.
and that led to the Ghost Who Walks and all that.
Well, here's
So,
the thing. Here's the thing. A superficial interpretation of the Ghost Who Walks would say that the Ghost Who Walks is a white savior problem, right?
I mean,
But
sure.
let's actually analyze this for a minute. So, Kit Walker's family were decent people running freight, doing the job of the high seas. They were attacked by the Sang Brotherhood. Their ship sunk, and Kit Walker, the not well, Kit Walker's the 20th Phantom, but the original Phantom, washed up on the shores of Bengala with nothing, an orphan from the sea,
Hmm.
right? The tribesmen took him in, trained him in their ways, helped him to become a man, guided him into becoming the Phantom, and he swore, not just as some objective Christian right, but as a survivor filled with a hunger for vengeance, to seek out and defeat piracy, evil, and inequity in all their forms. All their forms. Which means that the Ghost Who Walks, a white man in the jungle, undoubtedly would have fought slavers, would have fought
I mean, he
colonials.
did.
Right.
I mean, he did.
He's not a white savior. He's almost a Tarzan in the sense that he's gone native.
Yes. Yes. He was like a Tarzan, but also like a Solomon Kane. Only
Right.
nothing supernatural.
Right. So we then look at this in the modern context, and it's like you don't need to swap the Phantom's personality or identity to make a story about taking the fight to oppressive white people. If anything, you have the opportunity to explore a more interesting story because the villains will misunderstand. The
Mhm.
villains will think he's a white savior and be like, why are you helping these poor Kafirs? And it's like, how dare you? The Phantom would not put up with that shit. Because the Phantom doesn't see people in suffering and bondage at odds as different ethnicities. He doesn't put them on the stack. He sees them as people. They're all people, and all people deserve freedom. They
Mhm.
deserve
Mhm.
liberty. The
Yes.
Phantom is a universal hero. Everyone can be the Phantom.
Yeah. And it's just this whole thing with the Phantom being race swapped and turned into Timu Black Panther. It's like the whole John Carter problem. John Carter has influenced so many things. You can't do a John Carter movie that's very general and very all audiences because it'll seem too generic, which is part of the problem Disney had. There are other problems, but that was part of the problem they had.
Yeah.
So, so if you're going to do that with the Phantom, you're just basically washing out the character and washing out anything that makes it interesting or distinct. Of course, they had that Billy Zane movie, which wasn't very good.
It's not very bad though. That's the thing.
It's just there. It's just
And
fine.
here's the thing. As you know, I went back recently and I watched the original Batman set, including Batman and Robin, and was horrified at how awful it was. Right.
Mhm.
Well, sometime before that, I had cause and I sat Ty down and we watched The Phantom. Right. Because The Phantom is not a bad watch. It's a fun movie to watch as a movie.
Mhm.
Right. And it's like, is it good? Is it bad? No, it's not really bad. Was it going to take off and launch a multi movie thing? It could have. It wasn't going to for a number of decisions. In that sense, it's very similar to The Rocketeer, which also just exists and did middling at the box office, right? But in that sense, it's like, is it an unfun watch? No, I don't feel like I wasted my time. Treat Williams is a
Mhm.
wonderful villain, right? Billy
Uh,
Zane actually did his bit.
Timothy Dalton was in that movie too.
Who was
Oh
Timothy
no,
Dalton
no,
in the movie?
no! I was thinking the Rocketeer.
Ah, yeah, no. Treat Williams plays Xander Drax,
Yeah, he
and
plays the
and
gangster.
and matter of point, just because it is really good. We were talking about showing your villains being villains and how to um espouse villainy so that people understand who you're dealing with, right? There's a scene in the early part of the movie. We've been telling people, oh, Xander Drax is a villain. Xander Drax is a gangster. The newspaper guy who is the father of the love interest doesn't like him and doesn't want to associate with him because he's a scumbag. Because of this period in time when gangsters could hobnob with the truly super rich if they were sly enough. And apparently the newspaper man has come into possession of information that Xander Drax did not want to circulate, right? So in the very next scene, they or close to they have a guy come in who's a little bookworm, right? And Xander Drax lets in that he knows, but hey, shit happens, right? And he asks. this guy to look in this microscope and tell him what he sees, right? And so the
Mhm.
guy has a look, and he can't see it, and he's just like, "Oh, magnify it, it'll be fine." And the guy magnifies it, and the word liar is revealed the instant before a pair of preset spring-loaded blades are injected directly into the guy's eye sockets, right?
I, I mean, it's a pretty elaborate prank.
Right. And it speaks to exactly the kind of charming yet diabolical villain Xander Drax is, right? For whom world conquest is a lark. And that's all you need to know. It's like, yeah, I want Billy Zane to beat this guy's ass because this guy is the kind of guy that would take over my planet and then kill me for
Mhm.
fun.
Yeah.
Right? Like
So
legit. It doesn't need to be complicated.
no, it doesn't. It doesn't. And the Phantom, I think you could tell some interesting stories with the Phantom now, but it would be a challenge for Hollywood because the Chinese military is often the bad guy, or Chinese paramilitaries, or Chinese flagged companies in Africa, or Russian militias and paramilitaries. Could you imagine putting the Phantom in the middle of all of that? Or eco terrorists? I think you could do some very interesting things with the Phantom as a white man in contemporary Africa.
I think that God, I have to use a terrible example of this because it's terrible, but it is the example I can call to memory. I think you have to give uh the Phantom's antagonist the Homefront treatment. Are you familiar with the video game Homefront?
No.
It's basically Red Dawn, but they were going to make it the Chinese invade. Except that was not very politically acceptable. So they made it North
Right.
Korea. It's a video game that posits that North Korea somehow invaded America and you are a resistance fighter in America fighting the Koreans. It's ridiculous, right? You want to do a story about the Phantom dealing with modern colonial powers and modern threats in Africa as a white man, uh, and you don't want to insult any sovereign nations. Well, we can't really do what they used to do back in the 20s and 30s. We just make up a nation that sounds appropriate but is not real, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Uh, Instead, I would say make up a paramilitary, make up a PMC, right? And it's like, well, who do you work for? It's like we work for whoever gives us the money. And it's like, so here we are in Africa, in Bengala, and we are beset again by pirates, looters, and colonials, but they're not even the nation states that we once had to contend with. Now it's their proxies, and their proxies are here for nothing more than profit, right? It's fine, it's legit. It doesn't require a bunch of apologies or extra work because nobody likes BlackRock.
Nope.
And you're not naming BlackRock.
And yeah, I think this was a good episode of the show. I think we did a good job.
We do that sometimes.
We do, we
I
do.
mean,
Now we,
we do wish that our Minister of Dick Studies had been here to talk about balls up, but I mean, it's Ayrton.
I
He's
mean,
presumably off doing dick-based things.
he does have a life, so there is lots of dick-based things he could be doing.
He does have a wife, and he does have a doggo, and he does hold down a job.
Well, hold up. Doggos are not things that should be dick-based things.
No, no, they should not. But I can foresee a situation where he's like, I would have been to show, but I had to take care of my
Yeah,
dog
yeah,
for insert number of reasons here.
yeah.
And
But
we hope one day Church will return from the cold of the exile, possibly with a pack of menthol cools.
and figuring out a positive workaround to our current situation.
Right.
So for whoever's watching, good night, everybody.
Good night, everybody.